All right. Welcome to the podcast. I've been very excited about this. Casey and Meygan, introduce yourselves. Who are you? What's your social media account? All that kind of stuff. Let people know who you are.
All right. Well, we are Casey and Meygan Caston. We are co-founders of Marriage 365. And what we love to do is we love to provide convenient and affordable online resources for couples around the world. So we have everything from books and coaching, intensives, retreats, but our number one resource we have is our membership, which we are the largest online streaming service for relationships and marriage.
Awesome. So how did all this start? I've always wondered this.
Yeah. I guess we kind of have to start all the way at the beginning. You know, when we dated, it was super easy. We just felt like love was just going to carry us through.
Yeah.
And it was easy. And walking into the wedding, it just felt like this is so natural. Little did we know that all of our childhood woundings, all of our insecurities, all of our just even inabilities to communicate would come up the moment we got married. Literally the first night I slept on the couch because I threw a temper tantrum. That's a long story for another podcast. But I would say it was a 3-year sprint to the bottom where Meygan and I were just, we were cruel with each other, with our words, the way we talked to each other, the way that we dealt with each other, to the point where it was now at a point where we hated each other. And there was no love. It was anger. And so, I mean, that's kind of the birthplace of Marriage 365.
We went into marriage believing what I think a lot of people do, which is that love is enough.
Right.
And so we didn't have any techniques, tools in our tool belt, so that when issues did arise, we didn't know how to fix it. We didn't know how to deal with our conflict and our differences, which we learned is actually the majority of people who get married.
Yeah.
And unless if you had a healthy role model growing up, which we did not, because between both of our parents, there's 12 marriages. Do the math on that one.
Wow.
So we only know divorce and affairs and divorce again and divorce again. And, I just didn't marry the right person. And so through that process, we just learned that we're not the only ones who struggle to figure out how to fix their marriage. I think we instantly go to, I married the wrong person.
Yeah. And it was interesting that we really truly became the least likely to succeed in marriage. Mm-hmm. All the odds were against us. But, we made some courageous decisions. We turned our marriage around and, we were not thinking about starting anything related to marriage. But one day, God gave Meygan a dream that was really significant. She woke me up and she said, I don't know, but God just said that we're supposed to be the voice into marriage for this next generation. And I looked at her and I laughed because I was like, are you kidding me? Who's going to listen to us? We're the worst at it. We are literally the worst at marriage. Why would anybody pay attention to us? But, there was a season of fear where we ran from it. But there was so many confirmations that this was supposed to be the direction we went in. And
the whole idea behind Marriage 365 is that you don't get a vacation from marriage, right? Like you're married every day. And so what would it look like if couples were intentional every single day? It's actually the small daily interactions that make a difference. I think people think it's these grand, big things like let's celebrate Valentine's Day and let's go on a big trip. And those things are great, but it's the daily interactions that really add up that make a healthy marriage.
It was almost our idea of like, well, you can't just work on the marriage when it's bad. Because that's when most people say, it's now time to work on our marriage, or we need to go to a marriage retreat, or because things are bad. It's actually when you work on your marriage when it's good, that's what keeps you from ever getting to a place where it's bad.
Yeah. So what does that look like for you guys, for other people? What does that daily interaction type things look like?
Well, one of the things that we're huge advocates on, it's something called connection time, where you spend 5 minutes to 15 minutes a day. Obviously, if you have more time, great. But for those that have children or, you're both working full time and maybe you're shift workers where you're not aligned in your schedules, just sitting down or finding some kind of activity to connect emotionally. because they say that couples on average connect anywhere between 2 to 4 minutes a day.
If they're lucky.
If they're lucky. That's sad and pathetic. And the reality is that's not sustainable. Relationships require time. And so this doesn't mean that you're just going to sit on the couch and talk about your feelings. I think when men hear that, they go, oh gosh, it's like the last thing I want to do. But for Casey and I, we play games. Like right now, we're super into Yahtzee.
She's killing me right now. Literally killing me. I cannot beat her.
Yeah.
On winning streak.
She got 5 Yahtzees last night.
In one day.
That's impressive.
I think I need to go to Vegas. I'm on a winning streak. But no, we will take a walk around the block with our dog, have sex, take a shower. Yes, we will sit down and talk about our days, but even just checking in with one another. And of course, at Marriage 365, we have tons of activities and ideas. That's what we provide, that practical nature of, well, we don't know what to talk about.
Right.
Because most couples talk about their job, the kids, the house chores. And we want you to actually stay away from that during connection time and talk about other things.
And I think every wife is looking for her husband to initiate and to say, hey, babe, I want to spend time with you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But they don't know what to do next. So the desire is there. It's not like they don't want to. They don't wake up and go, I want to ignore my wife today.
Yeah.
But they just don't know what to do. And so rather than just kind of, swinging and missing, that's really where I think Marriage 365 helps a lot of husbands is, be a man.
Yeah.
Okay, initiate. Okay, now what do I do? Well, we'll give you those tools. We'll give you the conversation starter. It's not rocket science. And I just think there just needs to be a willing heart. And as long as you have that, then absolutely connection time is important.
It is. It's that ongoing maintenance that can really help a couple stay feeling connected, And then I think too, on a practical level, there's other things like for us, and this is something that we always get backlash on, but scheduling sex.
Yeah.
Hey.
We're like massive advocates for that. I know we always tell people, if you're having spontaneous sex and you're both happy with the amount, great, awesome, keep doing it. But if one of you is complaining, we're like, I don't feel like we do it enough. To me, scheduled sex is better than no sex. And so even making things like that a priority in your schedule, because otherwise life gets so busy and complicated and you just don't have time.
That's right.
Yeah. And I guess a question I get a lot is, as we navigate the different seasons of life, and we've got a 13, 9, 5, and 2-year-old. So there's wide, we didn't really plan it that way, but that's just kind of how it happened. But we were told we wouldn't have any kids. So the fact that we do is awesome. And, but it can be awfully tiring too, with that wide range of kids there. So what do you guys tell people as they're trying to navigate these different seasons of life? And, we're not 20 anymore and all that. We're barely 30 anymore, any of that kind of stuff. What do you tell them besides, connecting, but also you got to go here, you got to go there. You've got all these different schedules going on. What do you tell them?
Can I just say that you right now is the most important time to be intentional in your relationship. I think that is, we live in a culture that is distraction driven. Whether that, now everybody's got ADHD, which welcome to my club. But we are so distracted with, the latest streaming show that comes out, social media, our phones, and it keeps us from being thoughtful and present with ourselves. I think it really starts there. If we're not able to be present with ourselves, how would we ever be present with somebody else? Specifically our spouse, right? If we're constantly moving from one distraction to another, we're never going to have that space and time to think, is this working? How can we improve this process? What are we doing that's getting in the way of us making sure our marriage is a priority? It just feels like we're moving from, again, just one stimulus to the next. And I think that is, I'm going straight to the core issue. That's it right there.
Yeah.
What does that look like in real life? It looks like we're too busy. It looks like I've got work commitments that I have to take care of. It means that I'm on social media all the time. It means I'm addicted to screens, or, life is just so busy I need a stress relief at the end of the day. And so it's a drink or it's weed or, video games or whatever it is. I just think that life is offering us at an unprecedented time in any time of human history, so many opportunities for us to check out. And the core of it comes down to just being still, being quiet with our thoughts, and allowing, we're faith people, so allowing the Spirit of God to speak into our hearts to say, hey, these are areas that I want you to pay attention to. These are areas that you need to lean into, or I really want to convict you about this thing in your life. But if we're not present, if we're not stopping, we'll never hear that voice. We'll never get an opportunity to improve.
Yeah, and then I think on a practical nature, we have something called the weekly marriage business meeting.
Oh, baby. This is so good.
The weekly marriage business meeting, I think like the majority of husbands are like, I'm all for this. If you think about it, when you're in a business, you have meetings. It makes, it's telling all the employees, here's what our goals are. Here's some of the things that we need to pay attention to. Everyone leaves the meeting hopefully feeling very aligned. It's a place to ask questions, to check in. How's everybody doing? Do you have support? Well, we thought this 10 years ago. Why don't we do this for marriage? Why don't we check in once a week? Let's look at our upcoming week schedules, kids schedules, budget, meal plan, sex, date night, connection time, all those things, alone time. And let's get on the same page and let's put these things on the calendar. And then that's a time for Casey and I to sit there and say, hey, is there anything I need to apologize for this last week? Have you felt disconnected from me? Are the kids taking a priority over our marriage? What are some things that we can say no to? And so we have a great worksheet and a video that kind of walks couples through that and how that works. But I think on a very practical level, if you just committed to doing a weekly marriage business meeting, which is like a 30-minute, maybe an hour max a week. For us, we do it Sunday night. Couples, it's shown, couples will fight less. Couples save more money because they're aligned financially. And it's showing, hey, you're making time out of your busy schedule, and it shows that you care.
Yeah,
that's really good.
Of all the tools that we talk about, that's probably the one that comes back. We've had couples that are near separation that implement on a disciplined, intentional track of doing the weekly marriage business meeting, and we hear just amazing stories coming back.
That's really good. Yeah, I like the practical side of things, and probably I'm a guy, so I like that sort of thing. But at the same time, you guys have hinted towards it, so I want to get into it a little bit. But how essential is God, faith, all of that to marriage? Speak to that, if you don't mind.
Well, I will say for me personally, the only reason why I'm still married is because of my faith in God.
Good.
I get to test her faith.
I told our teenage daughter this. I was telling her how important God is because she's a teenager. She's in high school. She's questioning a lot and things like that. And I just said there are so many different things when I look back. There's no other explanation other than God. And I think that there's this balance of if I look to Casey to fill the voids in my life, I will always be disappointed. But if I look to God, who's the only man in my life who is perfect and loves me unconditionally 24/7, then I won't be as disappointed. I also feel like for me, I think that patience is something that's really like the fruits of the Spirit, I think are so vitally important in marriage. And I think that it's one of those daily things like, okay, God, give me the strength, the patience, the self-control, the love, the compassion, the gentleness, because I don't feel like it. And so for me, I know, I'm sure you feel similar, but for me, it's what keeps me grounded for sure.
Yeah. So I agree with Meygan. I think that early on in our marriage, I was looking to her to fulfill the needs that only God could create and fulfill in my life. And that created a lot of noise. I'm going to say something that's get us in trouble.
Go for it.
One of the things that I don't agree is that, and I hear maybe a lot of Christians say, well, in order to have a successful marriage, you have to put Jesus at the center of it. And I understand what they're trying to say. But I do believe that there are very practical principles stolen from the book of Proverbs that can make anyone have a great marriage.
It's true.
And that to me is where I want to say, because we have some atheist neighbors across the street. They have a great marriage. They've been married 25 years. We have gay neighbors down the street. They have a great marriage. But they're great communicators. They do all the principles that make marriage work. What I believe that we have the ability to tap into, if we want to make a better marriage, it starts actually by making a better spouse or making a better me, right? I can't make a better marriage by looking at Meygan and trying to fix her. I have to look in the mirror and go, how can I become a better person, a better version of myself, so that when I show up for my marriage, that's going to improve our ability to talk without being triggered, to forgive, to extend love unconditionally. And I believe that we have the ability to tap into this resource, this spirit that dwells inside us, to be courageous in those moments that I believe that nobody else has. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
So I think that to me is where I look at, it's not like God's at the center of our marriage and everything else. I actually think that can distort the way we look at what marriage is all about. Actually, the marriage is about me showing up, and I need to be courageous. I need to be the one who's willing to say, okay, I'm triggered right now. I want to communicate in a healthy way, or I need to just put that aside because right now we're talking about something important, and not wig out and go, what did you just say? Because once we get triggered, that's when our conflict turns into combat, and we're like getting defensive, where all of our insecurities are showing up, and then we're fighting, we're breaking all the rules. And that was us. So I was a youth pastor.
Okay.
And I'd come home and I'd cuss Meygan out.
Isn't that so great?
Awesome.
So babe,
it's real.
I was testing your faith. But that to me is where, like, I grew up with put Jesus at the center. Yeah. I didn't really understand, like, it was actually about the way I showed up. Yeah. And that I have to do self-work before I can even, like, improve my marriage.
Yeah. Marriage 365 is very missional. We are like Jesus, where Jesus didn't come for the righteous. He didn't come for the healthy. He came for the sick. So we actually reach any couple, any person that's married that wants help. We're going to help them. We're going to love them. We're going to teach them and guide them and educate them on how to be a healthy spouse. Because I will agree with Casey. We know a lot of couples who have no faith, and they have an amazing marriage. Yeah. I do believe what we've experienced is, if you do have faith in Jesus, it takes it to a different level. Yeah. And if you are aligned with Jesus personally, and then your spouse is aligned with Jesus personally, that's what makes a healthy marriage, because two healthy people make a healthy marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's really good.
And can I just, I want to say one thing that inspires us to continue going is understanding this idea that God has created marriage with this idea of, this is how I want to relate with my creation, with intimacy, emotionally, like this sense of being able to be with each other and create space and time. And so the same way that I would look at spending time with Meygan with a weekly marriage business meeting or connection time, really is kind of the way I turn towards God. I go, all right, I want to spend time with you. Like, let's do a weekly check-in. Like, well, how am I doing? Is there anything I need to apologize or repent from? Like really honestly taking those same tools and principles and applying that to my relationship with God, that I experience emotional intimacy with the God of this universe. Like, come on, just tell me that doesn't just blow your mind. Marriage is a place that God is uniquely active.
Yeah. And Casey always tells husbands when he's coaching them, he says, the greatest commandments are love God and love others. Well, the first other in your life is your wife.
Right.
And so you can sit there all you want and love your coworkers, and you can love your kids, and you can do all these great things. But if you're not loving your wife, or for women, if you're not loving your husband, then you're actually missing out on the greatest commandments.
Yeah. So that's really good. Yeah. So I'm a small town pastor. So I totally understand everything you're saying, and I would agree with you on all of it. And I smile because I could tell a lot of stories about what our Sunday mornings look like before we go. And they're not always 5 stars or whatever you want to say. They're not always golden, I'll say that. But you guys have a seminar retreat coming up, right? And speak to that. Like, if someone's interested, where can they find out more about that?
Yeah, so you can head to our website at marriage365.com. We are actually going to be in Nashville, which is exciting. I think it's such a fun place. There's so many fun things to do, especially if, of course, you love music. Pretty much everywhere you go has live, amazing musicians.
And good food.
Yes.
Great food. Lots to do. And our couples retreat, what I love about when we host is, I'm not sure if you've ever been to a retreat, but a lot of times you're getting lectured or you're getting spoken to by the speaker.
Yeah.
And it's like hour after hour after hour. And then the speaker will say, okay, what I want you to do is I want you to go home and I want you to just implement what you learned. Okay, so how many people do you think actually go home and implement what they learned? Studies show it's about 10 to 15%. Mm. So what we do, and we've always done this because we're the very practical couple here, is we'll actually model something, a specific technique, and then we have them in the retreat turn towards each other and they work on it right then and there. Every couple is working on their marriage, and they have us and our other life and marriage coaches on hand so that if they get stuck, they can raise their hand and we'll walk you through that.
Awesome.
Yeah, this isn't like 8 hours of lectures. This isn't group therapy. This is actually hands-on practical stuff. And the reason why we did that is because when we went to our first marriage retreat, it was a snooze fest.
So
and we fought the entire weekend and no one was there to help us out. So it was like, okay, if we want to do a marriage retreat, half the time we're just looking at like, okay, let's look at poor Casey and Meygan the first couple of years of marriage, drowning, didn't know what to do, had a desire, but didn't have any practical tools. Don't just tell me, Casey, you need to apologize. Tell me how to apologize. Don't tell me you need to forgive your wife. Tell me how. Yeah. Because I know that, like up here, up in my head, I'm pointing towards, but in my heart, like, how do I move towards that is lost. So I love the ability for us to say, okay, this retreat is kind of forcing you to work on your marriage because we know you're not going to do it outside of that space.
The other thing that we really focus on is fun, because I don't think enough couples are having fun and they're laughing. And both Casey and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Enneagram, but he's a 7 and I'm an 8 with a wing 7. So we love fun and we love laughter. And I would hate for anyone to be bored or to go, gosh, like, I'm glad we worked on our marriage, but it wasn't fun. Like, working on your marriage can actually be really fun. Yeah. And we're advocates for that. Like, I don't think if working on your marriage was always really boring or hard or emotional, no one would get married. There has to be a fun component to life. And so we definitely bring the fun. And then I think the other thing that we always hear from other couples is that they're meeting other couples that also value their marriage. It's been so cool to see all these people from around the world become friends with other couples, and then now they'll send us pictures and they go boating and they go on date night, and like that's even cool. A few of the couples have gone on their own trips together, and it's like, wow, I got to meet another husband and wife who also value marriage, who know about Marriage 365 and everything, and they're just trying their best too to have a great marriage. So it's just a really great time, and of course you get to meet us and we get to hang out, and but it's awesome. It
sounds awesome. So if a guy is on the fence, a husband's on the fence, what would you tell them? It's a marriage retreat. Oh my God.
Yeah. I think you are going to score major points if you just show up and say, hey, baby, we're going to go on this marriage retreat. Doesn't matter what it costs. Doesn't matter. You're worth it. Like, you have no idea what kind of level of confidence and security that you are planting in the relationship by just saying that. I think that a lot of guys are scared because they're like, well, am I going to have to deal with all the things that I have been running from? And, avoiding issues in your relationship. I wrote the book about this, how to avoid. And
unfortunately, it's true. I'm married to an avoider.
I'm still writing the book. Meygan and I are wounded healers. We're still, we still have to work on our issues.
Definitely.
But avoiding the issues doesn't mean that they go away. Right. And so I think a lot of times us guys have to work through some of the insecurities that we may have, where I'm afraid that if I enter into this conversation, I'm not going to know what to do next or where to go with this, or that I'm opening myself up vulnerable for attack. And what I've learned is the more I lean into that, Meygan actually loves me more and respects me more. I think we have this idea that we have to wear this suit of armor, this facade of, Captain America, strongman. And that may be attractive to other guys from the outside to go, look how strong that guy is. Yeah. But that's not attractive to women. Women do look for a guy who's being willing to be honest with themselves and say, hey, I actually may not know entirely what to do next, but I'm willing to go there with you. That right there is a massive turn on.
It is. I will say, speaking for women, if a husband has been saying, I want to rebuild trust, I want to emotionally connect with my wife, I really care about our marriage, but if you've just been saying it with your words and your actions haven't been lining up, I think it kind of just shows that you don't really care. You're just kind of full of it. And this is a really common thing, going back to what Casey said. I think men generally have the desire to do those things. I don't think they know how. Yeah. And that's where I really try to educate women is our society fails men in general. We tell them not to cry when they're little boys. So many boys are raised in homes, broken homes. Their dad wasn't a healthy role model. They get married to this woman who's like, I want you to be emotional and I want you to talk about your feelings. And he's like, I don't know how. And it's not modeled in Hollywood. It's not talked about on the news stations. It's definitely not modeled in sports. And so with all those things, how should a man even know, right? How to be a man, which for a woman, a real man is someone who is also vulnerable and can admit his mistakes and learns from those mistakes. And so I think that if a husband's listening and they're like, man, I need to step it up, I think this would be huge. I agree. And then I would just say to a lady who I think a lot of times moms will be like, I don't want to leave the kids. And, you have kids because you got married. The kids wouldn't be there if you didn't have the marriage. So don't neglect your husband. I am a huge advocate for getting babysitters and having a community of people from your church or family or friends or whatever for you to do this, because this is so good for your marriage and you need that uninterrupted time away from your children. You just do.
I'll say, the marriage retreat, that's a big spend. That's a big, there's a lot of logistics behind that. But even if that wasn't in the cards for someone, just for example, our membership, again, when we film our content, we're looking at someone who may not know what to do next, but I know that this is the topic, this is the meta theme that we're dealing with, but what do I do next? And just even saying, hey, I've signed up for this, video service where we can watch videos together and let's learn together. I think that concept of having a growth mindset inside a marriage is really, really important. Yeah. I think a lot of times we get married and then we just shut that off. Like, again, using hope as a strategy.
That's what we do.
That doesn't work. I hope my marriage gets better. I hope that with enough prayer, my wife will change. I remember praying. Actually, it's funny enough because I remember praying, like, Lord, would you just give me a better marriage?
I prayed that same thing, but I said, Lord, would you just give me a better husband?
We prayed, I'm using finger quotes, we prayed for a great marriage, but then we did nothing about it. And that was the thing that, like, I look back kind of almost humorously, like, God's like, okay, so what are you going to do next, Casey? Like, I'm just going to pray. I'm going to pray through it. And I'm like, well, no, marriage is where I think it's like practical theology. Like, theology gets lived out most realistically inside of a marriage because, how much do you believe in God? Okay, well, you gotta act on it. You gotta. So, anyways, all that to say, this, like, just being able to find a tool. If it's not with us, that's fine too. That's not what we're advocating, that we're the arbiters of that truth. Just get some sort of tool, a book, something that you both can say, we're going to work on our marriage together.
And if only more men initiated that. I'm going to say, honestly, at Marriage 365, 75% of the time, it's the female initiating it. But when we see the husband, when we see the husband step up, the wives are so grateful and appreciative. And I know there's amazing men and husbands out there I just don't even think they know that there's resources like ours or even like your podcast
Yeah.
out there, which is why people listening have to help spread the word, right?
Definitely. Yeah. That's an excellent challenge, I think, for people this week to take something away from and do. And I know we're hitting that time where we need to wrap things up, but I just want to tell you guys, I've really enjoyed this. This has been an awesome conversation. It's been encouraging to me. I think it's going to be encouraging to people out there, and I hope that others will go sign up and either online or go to the retreat, because it sounds awesome. It really does.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate you.
Yeah, I really appreciate the time. This has been very enjoyable for me. My wife's going to love it, and she's probably going to be a little jealous she couldn't make it down here.
The next time we come on your podcast, we got to talk about sex. Okay.
Okay. I'll make sure she's on too.
I have a lot to say if you want to hear a woman's perspective, because I'm a wife that's very pro sex, and so we got some good books, by the way, about sex at Marriage 365. If you ever want to check them out too.
Hey,
so.
That sounds like a plan. Hey, you guys have a great night, or a great day, I guess it still is. But I really appreciate this, and you guys, I'm thankful for you. I am.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah. Yes. Let me hit this button here.